Okay, people are starting to join. We've got Joseph and Joanna.
Hello.
Heather. Lana, hi everyone. Now, Alana's down in Melbourne enjoying lovely weather. Sydney's not so fantastic today.
But you're normally always better than us anyway.
Yeah. So
I've got family in Sydney. We don't play that game anymore. It's too depressing.
Yeah.
You always win. We don't win that game. Oh, well, we used to live there. This is the irony, right? I had to move down here in November specifically so my husband would stay. If we moved in winter, could you imagine in Melbourne? He'd be like, I love you, but
what took you to Melbourne?
I'm originally from Melbourne. So hubby's from Sydney, I'm from Melbourne, and went, let's go. I've been gone for a long time. I've got an identical twin sister who I'm super, super close with, and was like, it's time to go back and hang.
Back to the fold. Yeah, definitely. Whereabouts in Sydney did you live?
Neutral Bay, so amazing part of the world, Sydney, which was so great and convenient, you know, working in the city when we used to go to offices.
Was O-Media in
North Sydney?
St Leonard's? North Sydney,
yeah. So super close. Could drive. It was around the corner. I mean, gosh, it's unheard of, right?
Yeah, really handy. Really good. Nice location.
Yeah. Beautiful location.
All right, we'll get started in a minute. Everybody's still logging on. This will be recorded today, so you can send copies to anybody that you want to send it to. And during the presentation, if you want to ask any questions as well, you can use the chat box or the Q&A box, and Alana and I will get to it. So please feel free to ask any questions if you want to come off mute, and Alana will make it really interactive. Alana is an amazing coach. She's been the interim Chief People Officer for the last year for Koala, which has been a journey. She's also been the head of employee experience at O-Media, and she's got a decorated career. She left that corporate stuff behind to create her own business, and has been very successful working with small to medium enterprises to help them get to the next stage, working with teams and helping create change to get you to the next level. And she's just a fantastic person to talk to. She's always sunshine. That's you, Alana, in a nutshell. Such a fantastic person. So we're very, very, very grateful to have her here today. So use this time well, pick her brain, and I will hand it over to Alana to get started.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here. And good afternoon, everyone. I have to first start off by saying this is a topic very, very dear to my heart. And I think as Emma has beautifully laid out, the invitation to this event is it feels like the time is really important to just maybe hit pause for the next kind of hour that we've got together. And I want you to soak up everything that I've got to share with you today. What I will say is that this is an ongoing practice and journey for me personally, and I think for all of us, right? Like, I don't think we ever have this moment in time where we think we have nailed everything in relation to how we look after ourselves, you know, the people in our care, our teams, our organizations, etc., right? I think the list goes on. But the one thing that I've learned is that just one tiny thing each day does add up to a lot of really big things over a long period of time. As Emma has mentioned, please use the chat and the Q&A function. I want this to be a really interactive session. If you're comfortable, you know, taking yourself off mute and sharing, please, I want you to lean into some of the questions that I've got for you all today. This is a really safe space, and I want us to treat it as that. And so to start off, this is one of my favorite quotes, and you know, you only get one life. It's actually your duty to live it as fully as possible. And I just think, you know, I hope as you all joined and you read that kind of really resonated with you today. And the question that I'd love to start off by asking you all, and so please jump in chat or take yourself off mute, is that if you listen deeply to your heart and soul right now, what is one thing that you need for you today? You know, really, I don't want you to think about what's on your to-do list for work. I want you to really kind of reflect, you know, deep inside and think, what's one thing that you need for you, no one else? Courage. Wow, Lisa.
Oh, I love that. Time.
Yeah.
For me today, it's living in the moment.
Nice. Yeah. Social interaction. Yeah. And kindness to myself. Yeah. Energy. Ability to put me first. That is so hard, isn't it? Wow, that's so hard.
Yeah.
It sounds
really
easy.
Hard. I know, it does.
Easy.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this now then. How many of you have or will prioritize this need today? And there's no judgment. Have you already made a plan about how you might do it?
I know I haven't.
Yeah. And we're going to get stuck into lots of this. Journal. I love that, Kirsty. I absolutely love journaling. So I want you to consider this as we move through today's conversation, this idea that we can't give people what we don't have. And so, you know, if you think about, I love this analogy of thinking about, you know, cooking something. You can't make a cake without eggs. Well, you can. I mean, I know you can do egg replacements, but I've done that mistake, made a beautiful cake. Literally the last ingredient you add is the egg. Does not work.
Yeah.
Don't do that. So it's not cake, right? And I think we all love cake. Well, most of us love cake. So I really want you to hold the notion of this idea that you can't give to others what you don't have for yourself as we move through this conversation today. And the reason why I talk a lot about me before you is I love this idea of this me before you control zone. So in the real core center is you in all your beautiful human glory. Then you've got your thoughts and feelings, your behavior, and your impact. And we all operate like this, and we do this really, really subconsciously. What I want to start to get you to lean into today is how we do this more consciously and with real intention. Because as you can see by that control zone, it all begins with you. And whilst there are times where that can feel a little overwhelming and think, oh my God, it's kind of all on me, it actually means that you can directly impact it straight away because it is totally about you. There are little things, as I mentioned, there's kind of tiny actions that you can take today to start to really recenter and get back to that core of what is it that I need to be able to show up and be the best version of myself. Not only just for yourself, but it is absolutely for the people around you. And so today I'm going to spend a lot of time actually sharing a lot of tips and tricks. And these are things, and what I will say is I will never share with you things that I have not tried myself, because I just think that's, I don't know, and I feel like that's just a bad way to operate, right?
Yeah.
I've tried stuff, it hasn't worked. But also the beauty of us being human is that we are so beautifully unique from each other. And so what will work for me won't work for Emma, and won't work for Heather, and won't work for Helen. You know, it's such an individual journey. And I think that's really important, that as we start to explore some of these ideas today, some will resonate with you and some won't. But I don't want you to judge what you think may work. And perhaps it's a bit of a tick some things off the list, you know, experiment for a few weeks with one, go, nah, that didn't quite work. And I'm going to try the next idea and just see what lands, and approach that, you know, with this real kind of open growth mindset. So let's get stuck into it. Please, as I'm going, as I mentioned, shout out questions or use the chat box. I want this to really land with all of you. So let's get stuck into it. So the way that I think about me before you is I think that there are 3 elements. The first one being values, passions, and loves. The second being mindset and energy. And the third, the most important element of this, is how are you setting yourself up for success? So let's dive into values, passions, and love. Now, for some of us, you may have done this work, and this may be really obvious for you, and for others, it may not. Perhaps now, though, is actually also the time to take pause and just check in and say, has anything changed? I think one of the things that we're all experiencing when we think about the way in which we're working is things have changed. You know, we've lost this kind of separation between our work and our personal life, and I think in that we've lost a lot of possibly good habits and probably bad habits actually that kind of sat around the way in which we've structured how we work. So now, you know, could be a really great point in time, you know, for those of you that are in Sydney and certainly Melbourne, we're not far behind you as we're coming out of this lockdown. Is, you know, what are you going to choose to keep in terms of how you've been working, and what might you choose to let go of? And so I love this kind of idea of, you know, and I know we've heard it for years, what gets you out of bed every day. I have said, aside from the allure of coffee, because my morning coffee is like the one thing that makes my gratitude journal each and every day, right, Emma?
It fills my cup, literally.
Yes, right. I just and it, quite possibly it's the Italian in me as well. I spent a lot of time living with my nonna and nonno as a child, and I remember waking up to the beautiful aroma of fresh percolated coffee, like it was just divine. So it's a really that coffee moment for me is so important. But one of the things that I've listed some questions here that I think are really, really thought-provoking questions to sit down and spend some time just writing. You know, grab a notepad that you love, grab a pen you love to write with, sit in the sunshine, wherever your place of joy in your environment is, and answer these questions. You know, when you think about the three things that matter the most to you right now, how much of your energy are you dedicating to those things? Look back on the previous week. Did you spend your time in the areas that are really important to you right now? Now, we all have good weeks and bad weeks, right? I know as a parent homeschooling and working, I have weeks where I get to Friday and I'm like, man, we just made it alive. Woohoo.
Yeah.
And then right, exactly. Yep. All the bits around it. And then I have other weeks where I think, oh my God, yes, we nailed this week. Like maybe it's once in a blue moon, but we nailed this week. So I don't want you to, whenever you're answering these questions, please don't judge yourself. Don't come at this from a not being enough, for, you know, it could be less or more. I just want you to come at this with open curiosity and from this position of learning, how do I make it a little bit better tomorrow?
Yeah, I love that. It's a really good prompt for the journal too.
It is a great prompt. Yeah, exactly. It really is. And then thinking about, you know, who the most important people in your life are and how much quality time. I want to make sure we've got the quality time there. Are you spending with them? I was laughing with Emma before we went live today that one of the reasons that I actually started my own business was because I wanted to have more quality time with my kids. You know, before I started my business, I was traveling a lot, and to be really honest, my kids were calling me my nanny's name. It was this kind of moment of, oh my God, these are the most important humans in my life, and I'm getting called the nanny's name. It was definitely a moment of reflection.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. The irony, of course, is that I've been in lockdown for a significant amount of time in Melbourne. So I've definitely had a lot of time with my kids. The quality is probably the question mark that I would put over, you know, over the way in which we've been spending time together. But really reflect on that. I think one of the challenges we've seen in this blurring of lines between work and home is we're not as present because we haven't got, we've lost whatever it was that we switched off our day, right? I don't know, Emma, if you found
it's really true. And like Alana, like I've got a 16-year-old son, and I had to drop him to the station this morning, and he walked away, and it's the first time he hasn't turned around and just waved. Wow. And my heart broke a little bit. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Yes. But then I think, like, how do I spend quality time with him? Because like he's attached to his phone all the time. Friends are the center of his universe. So I want to get some quality time with him.
Yeah,
you can get little kids, but when they start to grow up and move away,
I know. Oh my God, I can't even bear. Yeah, I can't even bear to be at that point. What do you love to do, and what are you great at? And what are the things that bring you joy? You know, I think these are those moments where we find ourselves and we're doing something, and we lose our sense of time. And again, I want you to approach this from not just work, right? Like, what do you like? When I have got the time, I love to bake. I love the faces of the people that I love when they're eating what I've baked. But I don't create time and space for it. You know, I see it as, you know, oh gosh, it's now one more thing that I've got to do if there's a cake to make or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And what makes you crazy happy? my kids, we got them a PlayStation as a reward in the last lockdown, and we've got that, oh my God, what's it, Just Dance, you know, where you've got to like follow the moves, you use the remote.
Yep.
Now, I grew up dancing. I love to play that game. It's like, it is my version of mindfulness. I have to admit, I've really struggled with mindfulness, but when I'm doing that, it's like I forget everything else and I'm just solely concentrating on the dance move. I'm highly competitive, so there is also, can I beat the kids score, you know, in the dancing. But I think, what are those things that make you crazy happy and you just kind of lose this sense of time?
Gosh,
and this
you know what? It's so easy to lose that. Sorry, like I think it's so easy to lose what makes you crazy happy when you're just caught up in doing the do. I can't think of anything that makes me crazy happy right now. I'm going to actually have to really reflect on that.
Yes. Well, I think we grow up and we stop playing, right? And we know that, and it's really interesting now to read a lot of the research around burnout and being creative and innovation, because it is all centered. Play, this idea of play, features so heavily in all of the research around how we prevent burnout, and how we can foster more creativity in ourselves and, you know, in organizations. So they're really important questions that you kind of just take the time to stop and reflect. And this last one is a really big one. You know, how do you want people to remember you? I remember, as I mentioned, I spent a lot of time with my nonna and nonno and very traditional Italian grandparents. And I remember as a young child, my nonno saying to me, you know, how do you want people to remember you when you leave the room? You know, are you going to be that person that they went, oh gosh, I really love that interaction, or, you know, that was a great, you know, we had a great time together? Or are you going to be that person that said, oh gosh, they sucked the life out of me, you know, never get that hour back? And I think as I'm saying this, I'm sure we can all reflect on, you know, people that are in our circles, whether that's, you know, home or life. And so, you know, really challenging ourselves, you know, how do we want to be remembered? And I'm not necessarily talking about, you know, when you die and, you know, we kind of get quite, you know, esoteric on that, but just day to day, you know, when you have an interaction
how
with
you
people.
show up. How you show up. Your mindset before you walk into a conversation, any conversation in person or online, anything. Exactly. How you show up.
Absolutely. I love that. So that's values. So the first part is, as I mentioned, is the values, passion. Do that exercise, you know, make sure you spend the time and really get clear on what matters to you the most. Because once we start there and we start designing for you, you've got a list of how you start to prioritize your time and your effort and your energy. Which brings me on to mindset and energy. And I'm not going to spend a huge amount talking about mindset, because I think we're all really familiar with things like the fixed versus the growth mindset. And that's just like absolutely critical. And I don't think that anyone's going to disagree with that. I do want to make sure, though, that, you know, we have a conversation about you're not your thoughts, and choose how you want to be today, right? So in that moment where you wake up in the morning and you think, oh gosh, I didn't have the best night's sleep and I'm feeling a bit average, sure, that can be the first thought, but is that the thought you're going to carry throughout the day? You know, so for those of you that are doing any journaling in the mornings, or, you know, actually writing, how do I want to feel today, and answering that question can be an incredible way to shift that mindset, and really, really quickly, right? There are some non-negotiable here that I'm definitely not going to talk about. I'm not an exercise physiologist, but you cannot underestimate sleep, nutrition, so good food and water, and exercise. These, you know, for me, in living in lockdown life, these have become my non-negotiables. And I know the minute that I start skimping on movement, and for me, I talk about movement and not exercise, because I think when I think about exercise, I think, oh my God, I've got to go and like run a half marathon. But movement is, if I start skipping on that, I know I'm not in a great space. So that starts to be like kind of my cue.
Yes.
So let's talk about how you start to manage your energy. So one of the exercises that I want to give you, and some of you may have done this previously, is this idea of an energy audit. what I want you to do is to reflect on whether it's your week thus far, or, you know, kind of over the last week. And I want you to capture all the activities, tasks, or interactions that you have. And again, think of this from both a work and personal perspective, and whether they have fueled your energy or whether they have sucked your energy. And we all know these tasks, right? Like if I think about it in the context of, you know, in a HR role, my energy sucks are performance conversations, right? I mean, they're heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
They're really, really hard. When I think about energy fueling conversation, for me, they're you know, development growth conversations, they're coaching conversations, they're, you know, even sitting in team meetings and witnessing people in my team really shine and, you know, and kind of bring their magic to life. So it is, you know, literally go through, look at your calendar and go through it and say, and just list them in either of those columns, you know, what fueled or what sucked your energy. And then when you step back, you know, reflect on, have you got one column that's bigger than the other? And what is it starting to tell you then about how you're spending your time in those activities? Is there anything that surprises you or worries you? You know, have you got too much in the suck column, and therefore, you know, you're starting to therefore see how that's increasing or decreasing, you know, your own energy level. And then when you look at some of the items that you've got here on your energy suck column, is, can you get rid of some of these? Can you decrease them? Or add what I call bookends. So if you think about then, you know, having a challenging performance conversation doesn't just go away. That's got to be done. But can you bookend it so that going into the conversation, you've done something that fuels you with energy, and then coming out of it, you're going into a conversation that fuels you with energy. I like to think of the analogy of, you know, literally almost a petrol tank, right? So this kind of, you know, line going up and down is how your energy is moving throughout the day. And so if you think about how are you protecting your own energy through your through the course of your day, is this little line is going to go up and down, and protecting it on the way going into you know, something that's going to suck your energy, depending on what you've got to do, will actually mean that you can show up as a better version of yourself, knowing that you've got to have a hard conversation. But then importantly, really almost protecting that energy coming out of it. Which is a great way.
I love that. Yeah, because you don't like it if you consciously think about that. Like the way people remember you, the way you show up will change. And yes, as you said, those little things adding up over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then I think also when you consider your fuel is like, how do you do more of that stuff, right? If that's the stuff that really lights you up and gives you that energy, how do you start to do more of it? And then what I love is this kind of, when you look at your energy diary, right? So again, you've got there on the vertical what fuels and sucks, and then unimportant and important. And so you can see there the stuff that fuels you and is important. We want to just create the opportunity to do more, right? That's the space of kind of increasing what you do here. Below that, where it's important but it sucks your energy, is this is just using book ends, right? So reframing it, you know, and maybe some of the stuff in this space is also, depending on what it is, you know, is there other ways that you can get other people involved and, you know, start to kind of delegate some of this stuff? Is it important that you do it, or is it important that someone else does it? In the bottom left-hand corner, this is the unimportant, and it totally sucks the life out of you, man. This is the stuff you've got to say goodbye to, right? This has got to make its way out of your week. Now, I appreciate that not all of this stuff is optional, and we may not be able to control, you know, whether we continue to do it or not do it. What I want to ask you to really question, though, is, with the stuff that falls in this part of your energy diary, is what happens if you don't do it? Because and what really happens, right? So, you know, we quite often I hear people say, oh, I've just spent all this time doing this paper and then bloody no one read it. Well, you know, I think we want to challenge why we were doing that in the first place then. Like, let's make sure we get really clear on the activities that are sitting in this space, and whether we should be doing it or not. Now, if you hate cooking and it sucks the life out of you, but you need to feed your family, I don't know that you can necessarily delegate that. Maybe you can. HelloFresh, I don't know, hitting up Miz. Yeah, Thermomix, yes. So, you know, approaches with humor as well. Like, I get that they're not simple choices that you can make in all of these spaces, but I really do want to question those activities that are sucking your energy. Get brutal and really question why you're continuing to do them. And a good thing that I also do in this space is I actually get my husband to go, can I talk this through with you? Because sometimes we have this assumption we make about the value of activities. And it's the wrong assumption, right? So like a good example for us is I again, being brought up in a good Italian family, was the state of my house was a reflection of who I was as a person, right? So, you know, for any of you who are from you know, deep European backgrounds, that's a real thing. I mean, my mum is still the same this day, right? So if my house, and you can imagine in lockdown, kids are homeschooling, there's washing everywhere, I will go upstairs and go, oh my God, it's a pigsty, I can't cope, right?
Yep.
And whereas for my husband, he's like, it's fine, we'll do a quick tidy, it's, you know, you don't need to do it, I've got it. But for me, it's just like, I've got to do it right now. And he's like, yes, but why? Like, what changes right now? Do we need to do it in this moment? And so I think, you know, have someone who can play that role as you're doing this kind of order of your energy to say, is it really something that you need to be doing? Or again, can we lose it completely? Can we delegate it? Or involve small children? You know, now we've started chores, woohoo, in our house, which I love that. And then the last one to talk through is fuels your energy, but is unimportant. Now, this is the stuff I say, keep this in your back pocket, because this stuff that you go, yes, this makes me really happy. And so, you know, use this as a reward, right? So again, this is another great example of a bookend. If there's something that you need to, you know, reframe, use something in your back pocket to really help lift your energy. And so this is a really great exercise. As I said, grab your diary over the last week, do this audit, and just get a sense of how you are currently spending your time. When you do this, I want you to remember that there's no judgment when you take this audit, but there is absolutely agency in terms of how you increase the quality and the quantity of the energy that you have, right? And that's by really looking at what are the activities that are sitting in that fueling column, and how do I do more of it and reduce energy on the suck column. And I like to think of it as like your energy intelligence, right? So now you know this, how do you start to design for it? And remembering that this takes time, right? I don't expect anyone to get on this call, do this energy audit, and next week you feel amazing. Like, it's tweaking, it's working out, you know, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. But what is so important is that you have the energy for the stuff that is really important in your life, so that when that question we asked around, are you spending your energy on the 3 most important things to you right now, you can answer yes. It's about creating the space.
That's really cool.
So that's mindset and energy. And please, everyone, I appreciate we're kind of moving through the slides quickly here, but if there are questions or comments, or just, you know, is it resonating with you, please let us know. So we're going to spend a good chunk for the rest of the time now actually talking about the third pillar of Me Before You control zone, and that is the setting yourself up for success. Because this is where, you know, and I'm not a huge fan of the analogy, but the rubber hits the road, right? This is where we start to actually say, how do we bring this to life? And I say this quite often, that remember, you know, what gets in the way becomes the way. And so being really intentional about how you set yourself up for success is really critical to this being an ongoing journey for you, but one that actually starts to have a significant impact. You know, as I mentioned, not every day is going to be perfect, but that consistency piece is really, really important. So the tips and tricks that I've got listed there is what we are going to talk through now. And I want to start with talking about reframing rest. Now, I will admit I suck massively at stopping. I'm always thinking about an idea. I'm always thinking about, you know, kind of what's coming next. Even just to kind of stop and sit on the couch, I'm terrible at. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking about what does actually rest mean? And I'd love for you in the chat, when you think about, when you hear the word rest, what does it actually mean for you? Because if I think about what I thought it meant, for me personally, it was like doing nothing. And actually, like I am, you know, quite active, so doing nothing kind of actually doesn't really resonate, right? But I had this perception of it's sitting on the couch just with my feet up. It might be binging on Netflix. It's, you know, like, what is it? You know, what is it that it actually means for you? Is that you writing living in the moment, Em?
Yeah, I think that it's about being able to switch off from your to-do list.
Yes.
Like, that's what it means to me. That's what it should mean.
Yes. Yeah. Veronica, I love that. Doing something by choice instead of obligation. Yeah. Sleep, downtime. Yeah.
Yes,
break from technology. Oh my gosh. Meditating. Yeah.
I love that. Daydreaming. No pressure.
Yes. So nice. So nice. No work. Yes, Charlotte, no work. I really want to think about how we remake a model of work where our culture respects time, because I also think some of the challenges that we've been experiencing is that we are always bloody available, right?
Yes.
We've got our devices. There are notifications going left, right, and center, and we'll talk a bit about that later. But there's this access to us all the time. I mean, I think about you know, growing up, when my parents left work, they left work. There wasn't a phone, you know, the house phone wasn't ringing when they got home from work, unless it was, you know, something dire emergency. But that was it. They clocked off. And we literally don't have this moment where we kind of clock off anymore. And so our culture doesn't respect it.
It's so true.
Yeah, but I think by reframing how we each think about rest, and we'll get to talking about, you know, how we then talk about it, starts to actually put us in a position where we can create these cultures where we have greater respect for each other's time. And so some of the things that I've got here are again, when you're thinking about your energy, you know, this all starts to become part of one of the same puzzle, right? This one here around how you're managing your energy throughout the day, I think is really, really important. When we're working from home, we have lost those rituals where we've had these kind of inflections of our energy output, right? We're going from, you know, being able to walk to the kitchen and make that cup of coffee in between our meetings to we're literally in back-to-back Zoom calls, and there's no space. We're almost not breathing throughout the day. So what are the rituals that you can recreate? I listened to this great podcast, and one of the people that were interviewed on the podcast is an avid cyclist, and so working from home had lost that commute of cycling to and from, you know, the office. And for her, it wasn't only just a form of movement, it was actually the time where she was the most creative and innovative, because she was just in that zone. And she really, really struggled in terms of making that transition when, you know, working remotely. So she actually set up a stationary bike in her garage, and every single day rode the same amount of time that she would in terms of her commute at the exact time of the day that she would do it, and similarly at the other end of her day. And it totally transformed the way in which she was working.
Great idea.
It is a great idea. So, you know, I think those rituals that we used to have that don't exist anymore, how are we recreating them? Because we've just kind of dropped it all off. The other one that I've put here, and I will say I have mastered this, and this is not a good thing that I've mastered it, is how much time are you ruminating about work after you've finished work? Oh my God, right? Blow your mind. I'm sure there is everyone on this call going, it's me, putting your, you know, virtual hands up. What we don't recognize is the impact to our energy. You know, for those of you that said being present, you know, this is an absolute bomb to our ability to be present, because we're not, right? We're thinking about, you know, the conversation that happened at work, and, you know, what am I going to do about it? And we're planning the next day, and we're totally not in that moment. And we will talk a little bit about how do we get out of this kind of idea of rumination a little bit later on. But I want you to start to recognize these things as you're thinking about your energy, when you're thinking about how you want to approach rest, and which leads me to that next point around how do we be purposely present. Now, I will admit, people that know me know that I love a good dress up. I'm always finding an excuse. When we were living in Sydney, our family had this beautiful tradition of once a month we would pick a country, and so we would do a theme of the food we cooked. You know, we'd research the company, we would dress up in the outfits, we would play music, kids and everything. It was a lot of fun. But we've lost these moments that we used to do this stuff, right? Because we've all been living in lockdown, and this idea of traveling, you know, how many of us have taken leave in the last 18 months because we can't go anywhere, right? What I want to really challenge you all is to think about how you create a sense of holiday in your weekly moments. So, you know, of a weekend, how can you pretend you're going to a new restaurant like you were in a new city? Go to a new suburb now that we're starting to come out of lockdown and we can travel greater. Is how do you create these little moments of adventure for you and you know, whether it's friends or family, you know, almost, or, you know, create that day where you wake up and you say, today, even though we're in our own house, we're going to pretend we're on holiday. So we're not picking up phones. We're going to have a delicious breakfast that we wouldn't normally have. We're going to go to a new restaurant, and maybe we might make a new friend, you know, like, so I think about how you create these little moments as part of our weeks that we could mimic whilst you're on holiday, because we've lost that. And therefore I think we're losing this sense of rest and how we associate, I'm only going to rest when I'm on the beach, right?
Yeah. And that's why I think that delegation point, going back to your energy suck time, is so important, because it's the little stuff that adds up.
Correct.
Like sucks out our leisure time. So
absolutely,
like, if we can delegate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, to that point is boundaries. Like, who's nailed boundaries in their life? If you have, please come see me. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. Is that the thing that the kids throw the ball over? Yeah. That's what I think of boundaries. But it's true, right? I think, again, because we've had this like smashing of our work and home life, is the boundary has quite literally gone. And it takes a lot of courage. So, you know, someone mentioned wanting to be courageous. Setting a boundaries can be really hard, right? Because we don't want to let people down. But the question that I asked you when we started this conversation today was like, who is tuning into what you really need right now? And part of that is probably setting a boundary of some sort. I'll admit it. I've taken a call of a night time and gone, oh, why did you do that? Now I'm ruminating on work. It's ruined the rest of my life. And actually, I can't even do anything about it until tomorrow anyway. So what's the impact? It's just impacted negatively on me, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, when you are setting boundaries, is get really, really clear on what they mean for you. But then how do you share them with people around you so that they can respect your boundary? Because people will look at that with great kindness and love, and actually probably a little bit of jealousy that they maybe have not done that themselves.
Yeah, and respect.
Huge respect, right?
Yeah.
Huge respect, absolutely. And I always think our out of offices are a really good example, right? You know, and I've done it as well. We go, out of the office today, call me on my mobile. Call me if it's urgent, if someone's dying, if, you know, like, what are the words around it that we're setting that boundary with? Because people will call, right? We've got this accessibility that is,
because they want to get it off their to-do list as well.
Exactly. Spot on. Yeah. And then my last point here is recruit an account buddy who can keep you accountable to all of these things as you're on this journey of discovering your energy and how you find that time for yourself, whether that's with your team, you do it from a work perspective, or some friends, but put people around you so that this can be a really, really successful journey for you. I want to get on to talking about the thing that we love the most, our calendars. Oh man. And I love this idea of, you know, are you ruling your calendar or is your calendar ruling you? And I think we've all fallen into the trap of, our calendars are ruling us right now. And these are some really great tips, and I'm experimenting with these every single day, of how we reduce this meeting overload, because there is no space to breathe in our diaries at the moment, and we need to create that. Okay, it's not sustainable for us to be back to back.
Yeah.
We're never designed to work that way. I'm not sure if anyone has read any of the research around how we behave in this virtual way versus in offices, but there's a lot of research around how mentally taxing it is, because we can see ourselves, and when we look in a mirror, you can't help but look at yourself, right? And so the energy and effort that takes for us to have attention to ourselves, and then into the conversation that's going in at play,
really
into
hard.
then the chat that's also going on the sideline of the conversation, it is absolutely exhausting. When you think about how that interaction shows up in a physical setting, where we're in a meeting room, I don't stand here and stare at you, Emma, like the whole hour of the meeting room, right? Like there are moments of I might be moving my eye gaze, and I might be kind of,
yeah,
right? I'm looking down at my book, but if I'm doing that on a call and I'm like this, you're like, Alana,
are you listening?
Right?
Yeah,
correct. So it's we've forgotten the cues in terms of how we operate virtually versus physically, and the impact that has on our energy. So here are my 5 tips. Yes.
Sorry, just before you go into that, this isn't something that's going to go away after lockdown.
100%.
Either. Everybody's changed 100%. Their way of work. So
100%.
there will be heaps more.
We will never go back to the way in which we worked. It's changed forever.
And if they do, they'll probably resign.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I agree with you 100%. And I think this is why I think some of these tips and, trialing some of this stuff now, look, it's not a bad thing, but it will help us set us up for success as we start to really work in this more hybrid way. Yeah.
And prevent burnout.
Yes, we have to. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So my 5 tips. 1, do you need the meeting, or do you just accept it? My biggest tip here is write the invite. So before you send it, write the invite. If it doesn't start with an action verb, I mean decide, finalize, create, like what are you doing? It doesn't need a meeting. Review isn't a meeting. If you want someone to review something, email the deck out to them. You might have a 15-minute kind of check-in and say, hey, can we discuss, read the paper, let's have a quick 15-minute check-in. That is not a meeting. Let's get ruthless around why we're bringing people together. And then in that invite, write your purpose statement. I know there's lots of meetings around, if it doesn't have an agenda, I'm not going. Cool, like 100% that makes sense. But if you're actually not clear on the purpose of the meeting, I wouldn't be rocking up either. In that meeting, we're going to decide, we're going to finalize, we're going to create, like, what is the purpose of that meeting? Because what that does is that allows people to make a choice around whether they need to be there or not be there. And we'll get to that in a little second. My second tip here is invite the least amount of people as possible. The research suggests 5 to 8 people is the optimal size for effective meetings to make decisions and get clear actions out of meetings. I was in one the other day that had 18 people. Like, I'm sorry, no one even gets a chance to say hello.
That's a presentation.
Exactly. But it wasn't. We were there to actually make a decision, right? Like 2, it's just way too much. So who are the necessary decision makers to make sure that you can achieve that purpose statement? The other thing here is to get comfortable with not being invited to everything, because this I think is the other challenge, right? Because again, we've lost that social interaction in the office where you might have like the download from the meeting, like, someone comes out and says, hey, Emma, this is what we discussed. Because we're missing that in this virtual way, there is this fear of, if I don't go to it, or if I'm not invited, I'm going to miss out on something. Correct.
Yeah.
I would love us to lean into a space that says, I trust the people that are there to represent me will do so in the best of their ability, and whatever happens, and we'll catch up on it kind of post the meeting. I think that is the way to operate, rather this kind of, I've got it later on, this kind of fear of missing out, right? FOMO's killing us. Point 3 is make your meetings shorter. Why an hour? Could it be half an hour? Could it be 45 minutes? Maybe you can give people that little snippet of time before the next meeting. go to the bathroom, take a breath, God forbid, work through the actions that might be coming out of that meeting, rather than then at the end of the day, you know, once kind of 5, 6 o'clock rolls around, then they're starting their work. My point 4 here is say no to other people's meetings. You know, break this habit we've got of saying yes to everything. As I mentioned, you know, FOMO is killing our calendars. And so again, when you think about the purpose of the meeting, asking yourself this question: is my opinion critical to the purpose of that meeting? Will that meeting move your goals, your team's goals, your customer goals forward? If the answer to all of that is yes, hands down, get there, be in that meeting. If it's not, question whether you need to be there. Or maybe this is one of those meetings, again, if you think about energy fuel, energy suck, maybe this is one where you delegate. What we need to do here, though, is communicate the why of this. So don't just click no. Say no, because this actually, my opinion isn't critical to this. I can read the notes post the meeting notes post the actual meeting, or actually I don't need to be involved in this anymore. It's not really relevant to my teams or my goals. You know, go forth, conquer the world without me.
It does take courage to say no, though.
It does,
doesn't it?
It does. It really, really does. But if we really get back truly to what our purpose is, what our values are, and thinking about, again, how you're protecting your own time. Are you setting yourself up to show up as you truly want to be? We've got to start saying no to stuff. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, we can't have our cake and eat it, right? There's lots of talk of cake today, isn't there? Goodness me.
I know. I love it.
Point number 5 here is just be ruthless with your time. I want you to protect this like it is your firstborn, your greatest love, you know, the thing that you cherish the most. This is a part of how we start to rule our calendar and not let it rule you. You need to allow yourself time to be human. No one can do a back-to-back Zoom day and show up as the best version to their family. I've done that. That is a crappy place to be. Those little humans upstairs, and I go up and I think, oh, I'm just exhausted. And they're like, Mom. And I'm like, oh my God, man, now someone else that wants something from you, right?
Like, be quiet, be quiet.
Yeah. That's not how I want to show up. And so, you know, scheduling, I'm going to talk about our calendars in terms of some smart designing, scheduling time to do the work that we need to do, but allowing yourself to do that in a way that is truly human is really, really critical to our energy. Yeah. I'm going to really quickly summarize this slide because I'm really conscious of time and I want to make sure that there's some opportunity for some questions. Being better than busy. So I love this idea of being busy or working hard isn't the same as making progress or working effectively. So I think we can all say, yep, we can fill up a 9-to-5 day. The question I'd love to ask you is, how much quality time did you do in that time block though? Was it just quantity of hours that you worked, or was there quality of work that you did in those hours? And this is a really great, just a short activity that you can do to look at, when you look at the quantity of hours that you work. So, you know, across that top row in that table there, you might say, right, on Monday, I did a solid 9 hours of quantity of work. When you look at how many of those hours was quality work, and then, you know, like what proportion, therefore, of your day were you spending doing quality work? And that should feed into nicely into where your energy is or isn't. Because we want to be, I would much rather someone say to me, I worked a solid 4 hours, high quality work, then I worked 8 hours. And actually I kind of just shuffled shit side to side, right, on my note paper. Because that impacts your energy as well. So really take the time to look at, when you're reviewing how you're spending your time, what of it is quality versus quantity, and how do you start to look at that with this lens of, how do I increase the quality of my work, not the quantity of my time? That's the difference here. I would hate for anyone to walk away from this and say, I've got to work 10 hours to do the quality work. That's not the purpose here. Yeah. Less is more, definitely, in this space. you will all have seen versions of this, the Eisenhower Matrix, in terms of how we prioritize your time. I've said here to prioritize the crap out of your work. I mean, I do this at the end of every day. I do this to set myself up for the next day. And I've gotten ruthless about, the stuff that is in the not in portion and not urgent. So in that delete box, it gets deleted pretty ruthlessly now. Now, there might be some good comms that I have to put around while I'm not doing something. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it just kind of falls off and all of a sudden disappears and doesn't go anywhere. If only, right? But again, this is a really, really great tool to use in terms of to not only reflect on how much work that you're currently doing and where it's sitting in this priority, but also how do you push more of the work that you want to do into the right spaces here, so that you are spending your time on the work that actually is really important, and not, we'll all have elements of our role that sits in that not important box, absolutely, but doing it in a way in which it doesn't suck your energy starts to become really, really critical, right? Because it can suck our time.
Yep.
So this gets me to, and I've only got a couple of slides left. This is probably one of my most favorite things to do when I think about how we set ourselves up to show up as the best version of ourselves. And this is how you design your week. And I actually have it, look funny. I've got it. Let me see if I can quickly. I have one and I have it stuck next to my, this is like super, super, super basic. This one, I don't know if any of you can see that. But I have this on my side to remind me of where I'm choosing to spend my time. I can see it all day, every day. And then I have a really detailed version that actually sits in my kind of physical calendar. But I do that to remind myself of my values and where I want my energy to go. And I cannot recommend this highly enough. And this just gives you a bit of an example of one of my weeks. And again, this is, so once I've done my prioritization work, I know the tasks that suck the life out of me and those that give me fuel. I do my prioritization task, and then I spend half an hour planning my week for the next week, right? It's all about setting myself up for success. And I schedule in life, not just work, life. So you can see Friday night for my family is pizza movie night every single week. Family walk on a Thursday night, which is beautiful now that obviously we've got daylight savings. One of the learnings that we had from our first round of lockdown in Melbourne was that we have one day that we don't schedule anything. So that's why Sunday is clear for me. It's not like I don't do anything. That'd be nice, huh? But we purposely have a day that we don't schedule anything, because when we came out of lockdown, we realized how busy we were and we just actually had no time for downtime, which will be interesting, I think, for everyone as you're coming out now of lockdown. Like, this is my point around, what are you going to keep? This is one of the things that we said as a family. We don't want to lose the in the moment spontaneous activities where someone rings you up and you go, oh, I can't because I've already kind of committed. Scheduling time with friends, scheduling my exercise. When am I doing some reading? I'm doing a bit of studying at the moment, so study's got to find its way into my diary at some point. And again, if you think about your energy, the other element that I would put into this is, are you a morning or an afternoon person? And that detailed focus work, think about where you do that the best. So for me, mine's kind of, lunchtime onwards is my space. Even though I'm a morning person, in the morning I want to get the stuff off my to-do list so I can really focus on my detailed work in the afternoon. Again, play around with this. I have done so many different versions of these in my calendar. And what is really critical here is the color coding, right? Because your brain will start to associate these colors with certain activities. So for me, all my personal stuff is always in kind of red in my diary. And I do that on purpose because it's kind of the first color that, I see when I open my calendar. Make sure you're using all of the functionality that technology has to offer us, so that it maximizes the way in which you can use your time. Emma, have you ever done something like this before?
Yes, definitely. Red for me is client when people are going for interviews. So I make sure that I follow up straight away. I was thinking about that, the slide before last, just before. I used to work alongside a manager who used to delete his inbox at the end of each day. Oh God. Yeah. And be like, but what about if people need something? Just don't worry, they'll call me. Yeah. And it's but what if they're getting it off their to-do list? So that to me was traumatic. So yeah, so making sure that I have everything color coded. I spend Sunday morning, actually, we have a big family breakfast on a Sunday morning, and I meal plan for the week. I decide what we're going to buy, do the online shopping, and set up all the appointments for the kids for the week as well. So and then you can spend the rest of the day doing whatever you want and confidently go into Monday.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's the email one's an interesting thing. I'm a big fan of, if I'm in the CC, right, then I don't need to respond. So if you want me to respond, you better put me in the two. And you know, it actually goes into a separate inbox. It doesn't even hit my inbox, right? So and these are good things to really make sure that your focus is on the stuff. Now that means obviously you need to communicate that to people, but again, to your point, if they didn't get a response and they need a response from me, they'll follow up. And in that moment I said, hey, was I in the two? Did you have me in the two, like, line, subject line, or whatever it is? And they'll say no, and I'm like, dude, you need me to respond to it, put me in the two.
And there's so many different avenues of communication now, isn't there? There's WhatsApp and text message, LinkedIn, everything.
Absolutely.
Joseph, our CEO, who's actually on this webinar right now, has got the dumb phone now.
Yes. Yes, I have heard of that, and I think that we'll see a really proliferation of those, right? Because thanks, Helen, for coming along.
Thanks, Helen.
Because people do want to switch off. They don't want to be contactable anymore. They want to engage in it at a time when they choose to do so. And I think that's the agency piece that I want everyone to really walk away with today. A couple of hacks that I want to share with you. Notifications, man, turn all of them off on your phone, on your email. I don't know if any of you have been on meetings and someone's like notifications have been off. You can see like their eye gaze. It is so distracting. But if you want to be humanely present with people and you're constantly looking away, our visual cues are all we have to go on right now. And if your eye contact is constantly moving, it actually says a lot about how you value that person. So be really mindful about how you're choosing to be distracted. Now, if your phone rings and it's an emergency, like, that stuff is all normal. But I think in terms of notification, not only is it distracting you, it's sending a really strong message to the person you're also meeting with. So be really, really mindful of that.
Yeah.
I recently have reorganized the home screen on my phone. I
did that last week after you told me. Yes, it makes such a big difference. I've been doing my meditating now every morning.
Yes.
So the Insta's gone, Facebook, everything. Yeah.
Amazing. So all of those things that distract you, move them to the very last screen on your phone, because what happens is as soon as you log on and you see your emails, you see a number there, or you see messages, or you see whatever, right, it is going to distract you. Drag it all to the very last page. Again, it's a choice in that you engage and scroll through to find it. I'm going to move quickly. I'm really conscious of time. Use the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if any of you have heard this. It's a really great way to do focus work. I've popped some tips there about how you use that. We talked about what are your rituals for the start and end of your day. Now, I really quickly want to talk about this ruminating thoughts. Okay, in that moment, you finish work, your mind is a million miles an hour. You need to create a cue to stop that rumination. That might quite simply be asking yourself, can I do anything right now about this? If it's a yes, practically, can you do it? I.e., it isn't calling a meeting, it's 9 o'clock at night, et cetera, et cetera. So it might just be write down a note to do that tomorrow. But what is your cue to stop yourself ruminating your thoughts? Because it is impacting, your ability to be really present and just have that moment of kind of switching off.
Yeah.
I want to also share these. These are my tips for slowing a racing mind. So in that moment where we've got lots and lots of thoughts going on, I use this really quickly. It's like a really light form of mindfulness, right? What's 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I feel, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. It will center you, stop your mind racing really, really quickly. This works with kids as well. This is brilliant.
Yeah, so well with kids. I love it.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Second last slide, crew. I know I only said I had a couple. Lastly, this is the most important thing, is reflection. So you're doing all of this stuff, and please don't go and do all of this stuff. Just pick one thing to do. Promise me, everyone. As you're trialing this, you need to stop and reflect. We talked about journaling, you know, kind of gratitude journals, whatever it is that you do. At the end of every day, just answer a couple of questions about how your energy felt. What did you try? Did it work? Did it not work? What might you do differently tomorrow? How do you want to feel tomorrow, right? Energy flows where intention goes. I love this saying. So how do you want to feel tomorrow? And then what do you need to do to make sure that you can feel that? And again, you know, doing that moment of gratitude, you know, what are you grateful for? So don't forget, this is super, super, super important. And then lastly, I just wanted to leave you with this, that to ask yourself these questions of how you want to feel each day and how does that impact the people around you, and just to never forget that you can't give people what you don't have. So that's so, so critically important. We are bang on time. I've left no time for questions. I'm so sorry.
Love it. But if anyone does have
it.
anything they want to know, like, you can just feel free to get in touch with us. You can get in touch
Please.
with me, and I can filter it through to Alana. If you want to
Absolutely
connect with Alana on LinkedIn, I've shared it on the posts, and we are so grateful for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone for joining. And please, yes, as Emma said, please reach out. Any questions, connect with me. But it's been so, so lovely to help maybe give people some tips for looking after yourselves.
Yeah, look after yourselves, everybody. And I can see everybody's saying thank you. So I hope they go away with one thing. And keep in touch.
Amazing.
Let us know what you implement. That would be cool.
Please do. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, Alana. Have a wonderful
pleasure.
afternoon.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Too.
And everybody, have a great afternoon. Bye.
See you. Bye.